Greetings, comrades. When I wear the hat, when I wear a glorious hat, I become Comrade Communism, arch enemy of capitalism. So, but no, I like that. It's very warm. What was I gonna say? Today I want to tell you why your boss is an idiot, and I don't say that because oh man, my boss sucks, because that's obviously what people imply. And but there is this prejudice against employees that somehow the boss is always right, and that you being the employee, you're wrong, and that bosses are they're soon to be wiser and more intelligent, and the ones that are in position of authority. Not authority in terms that they're your boss, they can tell you what you can do, which is true, but they're just assumed to be better than the employees, and that's wrong. It's wrong, not to sound like a union member, because those are the guys like, yeah, man, my boss sucks, expects me to be there on time. That's union. I'm talking more legitimately why your bosses do indeed suck, and this isn't just me because I didn't get along with my bosses. This is me taking the red pill of employment and stepping back and looking and saying, whoa, bosses really do suck for the most part. So first, this is really for the young kids, young meaning, teens and 20s. I don't want you to have the experience I did. Which is you think there's always something wrong with you, because again, that predisposition or that presumption or the assumption or premise society forces on you that you're the dumb young kid, you don't know what you're doing, and if you're not making your boss happy, well, there's something wrong with you. Now that's wrong. That premise is wrong, and it's like, well, we could call it the infallibility of bosses premise, that your boss is infallible, that if there's something wrong with the company, you're the one with the problem and not your boss. And that's so far from the truth, because here, look, in general, people say, well, that's a pretty broad brush you're stroking there with. Okay, take a look at our country, the economy, and our government. Is it good? Who's been at the helm? Hasn't been young people, I'll tell you that. Well, that's proof that the majority of people, the majority of bosses, are inept. They're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. Most of them are idiots. If your company, my favorite, not to keep going back to banking, but it's what I did. My favorite is how I was this horrible employee, and I wasn't a team player, and yet the bank was losing money. The guys who were leading these banks and the gals who were leading these banks were running them into bankruptcy. I was trying to stop it, but I was the bad employee. I was the idiot. No, you got to look at the empirical data. If a company is losing money, if your division is losing money, if there's turnover, if the numbers are telling you that things are bad, then your boss or whoever's leading that organization is incompetent. They're a moron. So don't assume when you go and start your career that the boss is always right and you're wrong. That's an erroneous premise they force on you, and also it'll result in them being able to take advantage of you because you'll think you're not doing good enough, there's something wrong with you, and then you'll never get a good review. No one gets excellent reviews. It's always room for improvement. It's the biggest scam there is. So one, your bosses, and especially, they're my age. A lot of you think, well, boy, bosses are 40 years old or 30s. People must have their act together by that time. They do not. Trust me. My generation is so pathetic and incompetent. It's just because the guy is 39 and you think, oh, they got that little bit of touch of gray. Oh, well, they must really know what they're doing. They are just as clueless as you. So don't think they're superheroes or supermen or superwomen. They're average people. And they make mistakes just like everyone else. And you would think that experience would make it so that they're more mature, more competent, but that just isn't proving to be the case. Again, looking at the empirical data of our economy and our government finances and people in charge of our institutions. Now, why is it that your boss is an idiot or they suck? Well, because over time, you have to realize that a boss is no longer in the boss. They don't rise to the level of boss because of leadership or innovation or creativity or production. They get there because of one thing and one thing only, that's compliance. They do what they're told. Now, you do that for 20 years, not questioning why, not trying to think of a better way to build a better mousetrap. Your brain will atrophy, and you will lose any ability to think outside of the box, to be able to genuinely lead, create, innovate, and provide value to the shareholders. You will also take that thing, well, I just complied. I did what my boss told me to do, and I demand the same from my employees. Well, that's just, let's work harder. not smarter. Let's work faster, not smarter. Let's hit more nails with the head instead of getting a nail gun. That's what that is. So that compliance mentality is so, after 2 generations, is so embedded into corporate America that's not going away. So a perfect example, I don't make this up. This isn't for my own gratification. It's great because I always get proven right in the end. But Wells Fargo, when I used to work there, it was 1999. And what we did is we would have financial statements faxed to us. I would spread them in a little spreadsheet. It would print out some numbers, and then a dot matrix printer, it would print off the report. We would then take these reports and then scan them back to the various departments and divisions of Wells Fargo. Well, this is 1999. I know it ain't 2012, but internet and email existed back then, and you could do attachments and you could scan. So I made the stupid mistake, because it would cut down on my job by at least 75%, saying, why don't we spend some money on some emails, get us email addresses, get us scanners, and we can scan these things in and email the computer file to the bankers. And I got reprimanded for it. I was told explicitly that I was not the boss. Well, it was great. I quit. I think like 3 months later I quit. And 3 months and 2 days later they shut down the division. They shut down that office. It was great. It was because these middle-aged gals, they didn't know jack. But there's my point, okay? I was 22, I think 23 maybe, and these gals were all, and my bosses were all women, but I ran into poor male bosses too. They were in their 50s, and they knew better. They didn't need some little kid half their age telling them what to do, so they got fired, and that's how it goes. Now, there's another thing that I do want to address that's happening kind of along the compliances. Realize Americans have become much more fragile with their feelings. I call this the thin-skinned economy, where everyone is offended. I'm offended. I'm going to file a complaint. So your bosses are really not even managing and leading anymore, as much as they are not rocking the boat. You'll find people like me, people like you, if you have a similar personality, who are outspoken and independent-minded and insist on being productive, and do not, you can't tolerate, you cannot brook, you're very impatient when it comes to office politics and pleasantries, and, well, why don't you send the HR lady a thank you letter for the interview? No, screw you, I'm offering you my labor. Do you want labor or not? I mean, we don't jive well with the touchy-feely, glee, 9 to 5, that kind of stuff. So your bosses, we rock the boat, we cause complaints. Complaints lead to lawsuits, and then low morale, and then everything goes to pot. Well, as Americans have become more and more fragile, and their feelings can't get bruised, because that's what we taught them through K through 12, you're all precious! You're all precious! Well, look at these morons when they go to work. You can't be this kicking ass, taking names type of company with those type of people. You gotta be a kissing ass, brown nosing, don't rock the boat, don't hurt anyone's feelings type. Well, when you run into a boss, that's what I'd say half their job is making sure everybody plays nice in the sandbox. What you gotta do is find a sandbox where there's a little bit of rough and tumble and punches being thrown, and that just isn't the majority of employers or the majority of jobs. Your large corporations have to deal with a lot of people, and managers and bosses have to manage those people and make sure they get all, because otherwise feelings are hurt. And then, but that's another point. That could be another discussion, is how feasible in the long run is that kind of business where everyone is just eggshells cracking in terms of their taking umbrage or being offended. But that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a modern day boss. You're dealing with a babysitter, a peacemaker or peacekeeper, not an ass kicker or a leader. Finally, also keep in mind, there is a disease. I'll be writing a book about it later, but corporate American employers in general have become very arrogant and cocky because of the recession. There's more employees than there are jobs. There's more candidates and applicants than there are jobs. And essentially everyone is qualified for the job, so it's not an issue of competence. It's how does HR and an employer or a boss decide who they're going to hire? Well, unfortunately, since everyone's more or less equally qualified in terms of competence and skill, they now resort to things that have nothing to do with competence and skill in doing the job. So it's all fake, shallow stuff like
Did they wear a really nice suit? Were they impeccably dressed? How did they speak? Did they speak well? Unless you're going for a public speaking job, how you speak shouldn't. I mean, you got to communicate, but they are getting really, really finicky and petty with what they do. And then this results in a working environment that you got to keep that up. You got to keep all the fake. It's like middle school. You got to keep the fake image up the entire time. You have to. Yes, you got to go to the stupid company party, and yes, you got like, oh God, in banking, I'm sure, again, not to reference banking, but they always said, well, we're part of the community. You have to spend a certain amount of time doing community activities. I'm like, yeah, like what? Well, you should participate in the parade and maybe join the Elks Club or donate time to. No offense, bullshit. I'm not doing that. You're not paying me for it. I'm not doing it. But that's how bad, how deteriorated it's gone. It's no longer about whether or not you simply show up, do your job, get things done, and are efficient. It's actually quite the opposite, because everyone's more or less competent, you hope. It's about how much ass you kiss. Did you show up at that extra meeting? Did you partake in the raising of the orphans or whatever else? Did you engage in some kind of corporate social responsibility? It's not. And again, for people who are direct and impatient and want to kick ass and take names, that, brown nosing and ass kissing, just, you won't survive in that environment. So, and there, once again, you're going to ram heads with your boss. So realize, not just because of the qualities and the traits that your boss has, mainly their compliance, they're compliant, not leaders, but also because of the environment that corporations have become. It's borderline impossible for anyone who's truly sane and not brainwashed to work in a corporate environment, because it's just not conducive to sanity. You gotta really become that cog. You're not unique, you're not special, despite what you were trained to do. Throw it all out the door, do it the way we want you to do, even if it results in us being shut down 3 days later because you might have come up with a better idea. It's not gonna work out that way. So you have to decide, if you're ramming heads with your bosses early on, yes, they are idiots. No, it's not your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. If you get fired, you're on the right track. Sadly, and again, you don't believe me? Look at the economy. If it was booming World War II, 1940s, 1950s, and you got fired, yeah, chances are you deserved it. Today, since everything's upside down, getting fired is good. That just shows you're probably really independently thinking, and you're not settling to be a corporate cog and having your brain melted when you go into a corporate slog every day for 8-10 hours a day. But in any case, I wish I had this advice again. Kind of my goal is to help you kids. If you're ramming heads with your boss and you know you're a hard worker, like you can't be a 2.0 kid graduating from college, okay? I was straight A's. I worked hard. You just don't have the personality. You got to be self-employed. What that is, that's the hard part of being self-employed. You got to find it, and hopefully it works. But I'll tell you this: you sure as hell ain't going to be successful in corporate America if you can't kiss ass and brown nose, right? So, fortunately, that's the real world. But hopefully, you'll live a better life knowing that at the age that you do now. So, toodles. Oh. Buy a book. It's Christmas. Get Worthless. Get something. Go to my website. Buy stuff. I gotta go get Rumplemans later on today. Someone's gotta pay for it.